Amir, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is quite a privilege.
It, you know, again, last episode we had Sarah Vandernewt, and I had met her online, and it felt like a full circle moment. And I feel like I'm having another full circle moment because we had Renard Henry on the podcast a couple months ago, and he is your counterpart on the Black Belts and Boardrooms podcast.
Yes, he absolutely is. And I have to say, I couldn't have asked for a better collaborator for that podcast. And Renard and I just clicked instantly. When we started talking about the idea of doing a podcast together, it didn't take very long for us to say martial arts, boardrooms, corporate. Yes, yes, yes. Let's go do this.
I Yes, I love that. I'm a little behind, not too much. I listened to the second to latest episode, and y'all brought up executive presence again, executive swagger, which is trademarked by Renard. I want everyone to know that. He will let you know that too. So let's just begin there. I'm curious. We got to hear Renard's take on executive swagger. What is executive swagger to you?
So for me, it's all about how I show up.
Mm.
One of the phrases that I've started to lean on more and more in my life is that as I think about my own personal presence, what does it mean? And I come back to the phrase, leave people in a state that is better than when you found them.
Mm.
And for me, that really speaks to how I show up and how people interact with me, because ultimately, our experience with one another, it really dictates how we build even foundational things like trust. How do we build that, you know, wanting to collaborate with that next person? When you and I first met, Danny, I could instantly tell, you have this deep passion and you have this deep care for the topics that you are passionate about. And similarly, I want to make sure when I show up, I can represent that in some way. And that to me is the executive swagger, which is making sure that I am confident in who I am and that I am comfortable with what I know and what I don't know, and that I can give to those who ask me what they need and not try and overrepresent what I can't.
Mm. I Okay, I need to know when there's another opening on your team so that I can go apply because definitely can see why you are in a leadership position. So,
Thank you.
take us a little on that journey. You are a, I believe, senior director, but you have a team of 350 people under you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big leadership role, but you, of course, you didn't start there. Where did you start?
Boy, so I mean, my very first job was in high school.
Okay.
That's going way, way, way to the beginning.
No,
But
we
I
love
really,
that.
yeah. But one thing I will tell you that it stuck with me in that experience was that I found that teachers were very nurturing people. So because I was a student and I was a student aide, I found that all the leaders around me were very nurturing and they really genuinely cared about the people around them and the people they were serving, who were the children in the school district. So that
Mhm.
was my first exposure to what caring leadership looked like. And candor was, before the book Radical Candor came out, teachers were always candid in my experience. So that taught me a lot about how do I show up with empathy? How do I show up with care? Now, to get to where I am today is really just a lot of compounding effort on my part, but also a lot of grace from others. I firmly believe that if there's one thing you should be able to do throughout your early careers and later even is networking. Build that network of people, let people know who you are, what you're good at, where you need help. Surprisingly, people will help you if you are open to the idea. So, my journey where I am today, right now, is really just being vulnerable and open, but also being committed to my own personal craft. As long as there is an opportunity, somebody will find a way for you to slot you in. And that's really where I find myself with my current leadership where I work, is that I've been given the opportunity to lead this team. And the privilege that I enjoy is not without them being successful. So if it wasn't for the great team that I have, I wouldn't be enjoying the privilege that I do. And that is not lost on me.
You spoke to grace being a part of the role, and I was taken back to a moment where, as an EA, we need to be on top of details and events and deadlines. And I missed a very important deadline, especially in our line of work with a certain city government. And I fully expected to be either yelled at or harshly reprimanded, and understanding though that, yeah, this was completely on me. And I walked into the executive room and I said, "I messed up." And he's like, "Oh, well, what did you do?" And I explained. He's like, "Okay, well, yes, that's a mess up, but how are you gonna fix it?" And so I feel like that was a gap for me, that someone in an executive position or in a leadership position was able. It was a growth moment because I can come to you with my problem, but what's the solution? Come to me with the solution as well. And I'm curious, can you tell us a moment where either you received, actually, I wanna know that, where you received the grace?
Boy. Okay, so I'm gonna take you many, many decades back,
Okay.
very early on in my career. So I at the age of 19, I started a consulting company. This is going back to the dot-com boom days. So this would be the late 90s. I didn't wanna wait until I finished my college degree and start a, you know, computer science business or technology business. I just went ahead and started it. A, because I had done the work when I was in high school. I had a lot of free time, and that gave me the confidence to go ahead and start something. Before confidence can come, you have to have courage. And the work that I did in high school to learn how to write code gave me the courage to go ahead and start this company. But in the first year of this company, I had a small project. Wasn't a big one. As a teenager, I was still learning the ropes. I didn't have a mentor at the time. But I made a mistake in production that caused data loss.
Mm,
Now, ordinarily, that's a very big problem. And because this company was not fully operational, it wasn't 100% ramped up yet, the impact was not massive, but it was enough for me to feel the pain and had to go to the client and say, listen, we had this problem and we lost some data. But it wasn't that the data was completely lost, but we had to go through a disaster recovery process. And thankfully, we had backups and things like that. But just being in that, late teen years, doing this consultancy, having a client who's depending on me to deliver something, and here I am now with a real problem. The challenge for me in that moment was, can I go to this customer and honestly just say, here's the problem, here's the mistake, and here's what I'm going to do to fix it? Or do I just want to quietly fix it and just walk away and just say, it's all good, because there is a backup and there is a way to restore it. But in that moment, I recognized that that wouldn't be the right thing to do because there's a level of trust that has been placed in me. And I
mhm.
don't want this client to think that I want to be one of those partners in their journey who just will do things and not make them aware when things are bad, but also make them aware when things are good. So that would be the one moment, and now that I'm saying this out loud, I'm thinking, boy, when was the last time I actually said this to anybody? It probably would have been at least 2 or more decades ago that I would have said something, and it would have been the team that I'm working with at that time.
Uh,
So it's funny this question comes up, and now I'm sharing something that was painful in the moment, but it stuck with me this many years.
right. Oh my gosh, thank you for sharing. So, you spoke a little bit to, the your journey, and you were part of, like, the execution part. But now you're more into a judgment part, you're leading. So, when did you have that moment when you realized, "Oh, like, I'm no longer doing the work, I'm guiding the work."
Yeah. So I mean, it's so as an engineer, I like to build things. And at some point, I had to decide: do I want to continually build things, or do I want to help uh, teams and businesses grow?
Yeah.
And I recognize that when you are in a position where you're leading teams, you're still building things. It's just that you're not directly doing the work yourself.
Mm,
And that takes a different type of skill, different type of mindset. And I realized that I am a perpetual student. And if I'm going to be that perpetual student, I have to put myself in uncomfortable positions. And as long as I can build trust in others that they can depend on me, then I should be able to go in any number of different directions. So one of the ways that I've always looked at myself is, sports has been a part of my journey in life. So I think of myself not just as an athlete in sports, but also as an athlete in technology. And as a technology athlete, I look at situations that I'm in now, for example, where I'm not necessarily running the race directly myself, but I need to know what it looks like to run the race. So part of that is learning and educating myself through the people who do work with me, but also see what's out there in the industry and also learn and then bring that back to my teammates. Because ultimately, our success is tied together, and that's an important element of what I do.
Mm. You touched on the athlete part of your journey, and, you host black belts in boardrooms. And so it naturally, I mean, one can assume, and I know what they say about making assumptions, but that you feel there's crossover between the 2.
Yes.
Yeah, so what is a skill that you learned in Taekwondo that you were able to translate or transfer over into the board?
So I'll answer it a little differently.
Okay.
There's a thought
And
that's
now
been
I'm gonna interject and say I did
okay.
creep on your LinkedIn. I actually went in depth, and I saw you were an adjunct professor at one point, and so I came in realizing, like, okay, not only are we gonna have a conversation, but we're gonna have some learning today, so
Well, thanks.
proceed.
Yes. So, there's this idea that I became aware about, which is if I look at sports teams, they spend 90% of their time practicing, 10% of the time playing.
Mm,
And if we look at just even NFL or NBA or any of those professional sports, that's a typical sports team: 90% practice, 10% playing. Business tends to be the opposite: 10% practice, 90% playing. And you know for me, I want to be able to uh, I'm losing the thought. What was your question again? One more time.
yeah, no. So you've touched on, your background as an athlete, and we know that you are a taekwondo instructor. You are a black belt, I believe, in taekwondo. So what have you learned through your journey of taekwondo that has translated or transferred over into the boardroom?
Thank you for that reminder. I was forgetting the part about connecting the sports and the business. So for me, it's about, continuous improvement. So I come back to that quote about 90% playing and 10% practicing in
Mhm.
business is because, for me, practice needs to happen constantly. So one of the things that I try and do is, in martial arts, you're not competing all the time. So my taekwondo training, it was mostly in the dojo until it's competition or a tournament or something like that, or it's testing time, and then you're going ahead and putting everything you have on the floor. What I try and do at least is bring that level, that discipline, and that mindset to my work. I'm not going to start my day without learning. So every morning I have a ritual that involves learning about something. And there's 45 minutes in the morning that I have where I'm listening to an audiobook, or I'm writing in my journal, or I'm doing both, or I'm reading a book, or I'm reading some kind of news related to my industry that I'm interested in learning about. And I try to keep that and protect that time as best as I can. And to me, that's part of the practice that I bring to my work is how do I become a better student? Because ultimately, my team is going to look up to me and expect that I understand what they're talking about, what their challenges are, and that in some way, either I will connect them to someone who can help them, or I'm in the trenches with them solving it, or I can provide them an avenue where they can go chase after whatever the solution looks like.
Mhm.
So that's how I connect the two, is through discipline and practice.
How old were you when you began taekwondo? And there's a reason
So
for this. I know Renardo's a
yeah.
little older when he started his martial arts journey, and so I'm curious.
So I was 40 years old
Okay.
when I started Taekwondo. But in my teen years, I was practicing other forms of martial arts. And even in my 20s and my 30s, when my kids were younger, we tried all kinds of sports. We tried a different form of martial arts even back then. It was Kembo for a period of time. So, I nerd out on martial arts a lot. I love combat sports in general.
Mhm.
Boxing is still and was my longtime favorite sport. So for me, if anybody wants to talk about martial arts, I can go on for days. History included, not just the actual combat systems.
Yeah, I feel like that's just a whole other podcast, just black belts.
It is. It is. Yeah, I don't wanna, bore your audience with anything martial arts related.
You'd be surprised. So many are also on their own fitness journeys, and so a lot of them do relate to the transfer over of skills that you have when you're doing some type of, endurance sport or martial arts and how that relates into personal life and professional. So, oh my gosh, now it's my turn to lose my train of thought. I Yeah, it's part of the journey.
So,
Do you ever have these moments and during yours?
for in if endurance sports.
No, no, do you ever have moments in black belts and boardrooms where you're like, "Wait a sec, I gotta take a moment."
Oh, sometimes, yeah.
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 Y'all make it
So
seem.
yeah, I mean, one of the challenge so this is again, this is a little off topic, but, I think it's a good point because I lost my train of thought for a moment and so did you. I think one of the challenging things that we can do for ourselves is be active listeners. So as
Mm,
you're hosting a podcast, it's one of the skills that I've picked up on is I have to be an active listener and I have to keep my mind completely focused for the duration that I'm here. Not many people are brave enough to do that. So, to put some shine on you as the host of this podcast, it's an act of courage, and over time as you keep doing this, you build that confidence
mm.
and that confidence then makes you an expert. But most people don't even get to the starting line.
Yeah, podcasting 101 with Dr. Khawaja.
Yeah.
There's so many things or so many topics I feel we could delve into, just go deep dive in. And, thank you for mentioning active listening because it's a skill that does need to be honed. So many people think they are good listeners, but then once you actually start going in and understanding it, it's it's hard to stay in the moment. And I know for me, you'll mention something, I'm like, "Oh, we need to explore that." But then you're still explaining and still going, and then you'll mention something else like, "Oh, no, we need to go there." So, yes, thank you. Thank you for bringing that to the community's attention. I'm did you find that you were just a natural at active listening, or did you have a technique that helped you become one?
I had to practice it.
Yeah.
I so now to be fair, I think I had my mom was always somebody who wanted us to listen. So she would be very clear, pay attention, pay attention. So that was always drilled in me that when somebody else is talking, you don't speak.
Mm,
And I think that helped me at least latch on to active listening as a skill. But I
mhm.
know that I have to listen. I have to pay attention. I have to pick out the words and then see what's important and interesting. And that's the extension of psychology now. I learned over time that if I learned human psychology, then it would make me a better listener because then I get to understand from the other person's point of view. And that's
Mm.
really what active listening is that you're trying to see from the perspective of the other because a lot of times we're always looking at the world through our own two lenses. And that sometimes keeps us away from the things that will give us even more opportunity or even more greater awareness of what's going on in the world.
That is so true, and I wish I had my little notebook so I'd write the timestamp because that's where we're gonna go and get the short from. So, we'll turn it back to business and the boardroom. We'll come back to the black belt in a moment. Yeah. So, when you find yourself, leading teams of people, you have so many people, so many different opinions, so many different perspectives. How do you manage to hold space for all of that? I'll It's a little selfish here because I'm sure you picked up on it. the conflict part to being in leadership is challenging for me. And I say conflict, but it's being able to hold space for differing opinions, for challenging opinions. And I wonder sometimes if I could ever fully step into like a chief of staff role where you have people under you because I'm a Taurus, I'm stubborn. And so what have you found to help you with that?
Look at the other person's perspective. You know, so I don't want to belittle that statement, but really that's what it boils down to. But there's a second dimension to that that I want to bring into focus as well. So part
Mhm.
one is to your question, which is how do I hold space? And that is something that is very important in any leadership capacity. You have to be able to hold space for dissenting ideas or contrarian ideas because at the end of the day, you don't want to ever find yourself, or at least I hold this position, which is I don't ever want to find myself believing that I know everything. Now, the second part of that is I have to trust that when I make a decision, it's the right decision because I have to be accountable for that decision. So the listening part of it is, if I look at it from the lens of service, it is a service that I must give myself as a leader, because otherwise I will not have the capacity to make the right decision. So philosophically, that's the position that I take, is that there is a value and benefit that other people bring to me. And if I don't give that voice the space that it needs to echo, then I will be the one losing in that conversation.
Mm. When you were starting out and when you were starting off and starting to take these leadership roles, was there a moment that I don't want to say you failed, but where that didn't happen? And yeah, let's expound there. Let's go there.
Yeah, I mean, you're asking some really pointed vulnerability related questions. So I
I
appreciate
don't
you.
know any other way to be but
Yeah.
vulnerable.
No, it's all good, Danny. So here's what I'll say. First and foremost, leadership is not a title. You don't have
Mm.
to lead teams of people to be a leader.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah,
Drive it
leadership is
home.
not a title.
Oof.
You have to know that there is value that you bring to the world and to the people that you involve in your professional life or in your personal life. If we have friends around us, there's a reason why those people are choosing to be around you, is because you have something to give. And leadership is really that desire to give that you have, or give from what you have.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be a title. So I'll use a very specific concrete example. One of the roles in in the software engineering world is a staff engineer or a distinguished engineer. There's different levels of seniority in that space. But usually those roles don't have people that they report to, but their influence comes through their craftsmanship. And that is a form of leadership. If you are somebody who cares about the planet, for example, and you want to make a small change, you will find a way to make that change happen, or at least you'll give it a try. That to me is also leadership. When it comes to leadership, the important aspect is, what are you looking to hold yourself responsible for? And what is the level of accountability that you want to accept?
That oh my gosh, you are speaking to my heart right now, and I hope that people listening understand, like, you kinda remind me of the Lorax, and I think it's because you mentioned, like, an environmental example, but, if someone like you doesn't care, I had the quote, if someone like everyone should care, everyone makes an impact, no matter how small. Now, sorry, Lorax, I know I'm totally misquoting you, but to your point, I love orcas. And you can blame Lisa Frank and Max Splash for that and the colorful folder that I had as a kid. But we are in Texas. There are orcas nowhere near us in the wild. They are in the Pacific Northwest. One day I just decided I want to go back to elementary days and run a mile every hour on the hour for 24 hours and have someone sponsor 24, a mile. Find 24 people to sponsor a mile, and that money is going to go to a nonprofit in the Northwest. And that was something so small. And, I gratefully to the people who have sponsored me, every year have managed to raise a little more. And now, my coaching team, my team teases me like, "Oh, you're gonna go run for Wells." I'm like, "Yes, I am." And
Yeah.
it was just me, and my husband didn't realize when he married me, he was gonna be brought onto this project. So he runs with me now for Wells. But, you know, take that. And I never really saw it as a leadership role. And I honestly still don't think of it as a leadership role. It's a caring role. And it's something in my sphere that I was able to do and with what I had. And to hear it framed that way, it's, and now it's touched other parts of my life. I try to buy clothes that are thrifted now to be more environmentally friendly. My husband loves this. I have moved away from K-cups and am using the reusable K-cup. It's like 30 seconds of extra work, but it took me a while to move there. So all of that just because you said, you pointed out, take something that you care about and show leadership in that capacity. And that is just kind of a mind-blowing moment for me, and I hope it is for other people listening too, and I hope it's inspiring them to think of ways just what they care about to show leadership in that way.
Yeah, and it's very easy to say that, where I sit today, for example, there's a profit making company that has to show revenues quarter
Mm,
after quarter to uh, shareholders. Pick
mhm.
any company on the planet that's a publicly traded company, for example, or even if you're a private entity, you have to be able to show profit.
Yeah.
But that really isn't the only space where leadership can shine and can materialize. We can pick several names in the history books, for example, pick Nelson Mandela, pick Martin Luther King, pick any number of people. You find that what they really shine at is understanding the problem and understanding how they can help solve the problem, and then finding the courage to take responsibility of the problem, and then have the confidence that they can be the leaders that they are, so that not only are they accountable for the results that they want to try and achieve, but they bring other people into that vision so that other people can find their voice in that accountability range. And it's a range at the end of the day. I don't have to be the only person accountable. If I can bring other people, that's even a sign of greater inspirational leadership. But if we recently had Martin Luther King Day. So if I pick on Martin Luther King, for example, Dr. King knew how to inspire people. He knew how to weave a story that other people can see themselves in, and then let other people choose how much of that investment they want to make. Some people went all the way, some people went part of the way, but just having the ability and giving that opportunity and space is really what leadership is about, at least for me, which is, can I weave a vision that other people can buy into? And do I myself believe it? I mean, it has to start there too.
Yeah. When you spoke to historical figures and their leadership, but down let's bring it down to our level. I'm curious to who was the leader who inspired you before you went on to become the leader inspiring others? You know, who was your mentor?
You know, I give a lot of credit to my mom,
Oh,
and part of the reason is that she was very firm with us when we were growing up, and being the oldest in an Asian culture, there's a certain set of responsibilities and expectations that come with that.
yeah.
And my mom wanted to make sure that I knew what they were. She, you are going to take care of your sisters, your younger sisters. You are going to help your younger brother. You are going to make sure that you know more so that you can help others who don't have the same privileges as you do.
Mhm.
And, I come from a family where, my dad is from one part of Asia and my mom is from another part of Asia. So my dad grew up in Pakistan, my mom grew up in the Philippines. But I was born in England. I lived in England, lived in Pakistan, lived in the Philippines, lived most of my life here in the US. But throughout that entire journey, I could say that my mom was that one figure that was the leader of the household, and she wanted to make sure that her kids were not slackers. So truly, I would say if there was one person, the first person who gave me that value would be my mom.
That's so touching. Do you want me to snip this and send it to her?
I'm sure she'll get a kick out of it if you did that, absolutely. But I'm hoping I tell her enough times that, I appreciate her. So, but yes, that
That
would be a nice gesture.
that is such a great reminder, and, this is going to be aired next week, so it won't today is actually, I believe, in I think a light just went out. Um, Today is International Hug Day, so this is a nice reminder, Amir, to there's someone who is important in your life. If you haven't told them how much of an impact that they have on you, do so. Hug consensually, only
Yeah.
if you want it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, all right. I know I have, like I told you, was the way of preparation. I do have questions that, I have just in case, but the athlete in me now kind of wants to pivot to the black belts part of your journey. So you started when you were 40, and am I wrong to think that that's a not many people will start a new physical journey at 40?
I think that's a very normal thing.
Yeah.
I can agree with that generalization you just now made. I think most people are probably not willing to take that leap. For me, like I said, it's always been I'm a perpetual student.
You
And
keep coming
being a
back to
student
that.
means you have to be uncomfortable,
Yep. How
So
Yeah. I c I'm enjoying how much you are driving home that you are a perpetual student, because it's true. When we stop learning, we stop growing.
mm.
So, how do you f are you in a leadership role in Taekwondo as well?
So I mean, an instructor is a leadership role,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, right? When you are teaching others, you are taking responsibility not just for their growth, but you're also responsible for making sure that you're providing a safe environment for that learning to happen. And it's a two-way street at the end of the day. First you have to build the environment, and then you have to be present in that environment to deliver the material, whatever it is that you're delivering, whether it's, Taekwondo or something else. But the second part of that street is the student should be able and willing to do the work.
Mm.
So that to me is how I see the value that I can bring to others and the service that I can not only bring to others but also bring to myself. Because at the end of the day, I think to quote one of our guests, Paula Dukes, there is Pamela Dukes. There is, we're our own chief minimizing officers. We're our own CMO. And that resonated with me because, if I look at my own journey, there were many moments where I let imposter syndrome or let a lack of confidence get the best of me. And I think we all suffer that in different ways. But ultimately, it's having the confidence to know what you want and having the confidence to know that the courage to know that you can go chase it.
Where did you go when you found yourself questioning the journey?
Um, so if I question a decision that I'm making, or if I made that decision, is that the question that you're asking?
I'm saying, because to become a black belt, it's just not an overnight thing. It's a process. And how many years did it take you?
So to get to first degree, it took me over 3 years. So each level has time in rank and certain skills you have to master.
I love this.
Then
This is a professor in you coming out. So yes,
yeah.
explain, tell us.
So the way it works, at least in the American Taekwondo Association, is that once you get into the black belt rank as first degree black belt, that's really the beginning of your journey. And each belt rank after that, you are spending time in rank. So go from first degree to second degree, you have to spend 1 year time in rank, and then you have to learn certain forms and materials, and you have to be able to demonstrate them at testing.
Mhm.
Demonstration would include things like sparring, one-on-one combat, being able to break boards, being able to show the form for your level of black belt. So first degree has a form, second and third, and then to go from second to third degree black belt, it's 2 years time in rank, and then some more materials. Then you have to pass tests and so on, and then you also have to compete or judge in different competitions, and you earn leadership points, and that helps you as an instructor.
Mm.
So kudos to the American Taekwondo Association, or the ATA, for putting together a very well structured system, because as an individual, need it. I thrive in structure, and they have that in spades. So every level challenged me physically, mentally. It challenged me, in some ways, to just show up to the dojo even if my body's aching. But then you leave the dojo, you have to do all this physical fitness work, because you can't just show up to the dojo and do the work. It's also outside of the dojo you're doing the work. So what it instills in you, and this is what I tell parents who are looking at their kids and saying, I want my kids to have discipline.
Mm.
The advice I generally share is that pick any martial art. Look at the way they're teaching it, because you want to make sure that the instructor is good, the environment is safe, and then let that structure, instill itself in the student. So for me, just reminding myself, hey, you got to be able to do the work no matter what your body's telling you. Make sure you take care of it. But outside of damaging yourself, just set that time away from everything else. You can give it the attention it needs. Because ultimately, anything that's important we'll make time for. But if it's not important, we won't make time for.
That you are dropping some truth bombs during this. Um, yeah, I hadn't thought of this in a very long time. I attempted it wasn't judo. I wanna say it was taekwondo. In college, there was a club, and I was a small town girl experiencing college life, and it's like, "Oh, I wanna try things." So I tried this, and my ex came in towards the part of the training, and he had taken martial arts, and we were learning how to roll, and it was painful for me. I did not like it, and afterwards, my ex said, "You weren't doing that right." And I go, "Oh, I didn't know, like, the instructor didn't tell me." He's like, "Yeah, no." He's like, you can hurt yourself if you don't do that right." And so it kinda like, "Oh, I don't know if I wanna do this. I don't wanna hurt myself," which I wish I would have learned how to do it, because honestly, I go trail running and with my husband, and he took judo as a kid, and when he trips, he rolls. It's kinda cool to see, but he has managed to minimize his his injury on the trail because of that martial arts skill. But
Yeah.
you're right, there's something to be said about creating that safe environment.
Yeah, and you reminded me, my mom was actually a judo practitioner as well. So, the discipline that she had probably also came from the martial arts. I don't doubt that, because I've received a judo slap or two in my lifetime.
Oh my gosh. Oh, so yeah, that I the the physical journey part nerd to me has enjoyed this just all of this talk. And so before we leave you, Amir, we like to offer practical takeaways or just things people could implement. Now the conversation has got the wheels turning. Like, okay, I want to do this. Give us a little. You spoke to rituals, which I've listened to other podcasts with high achievers, high thinkers, people who are just doing things in life, and so many of them journal. It's pretty amazing. how many of these people you think wouldn't have the time to journal do. And I would love to touch on that just for a second. How has journaling improved your life?
I don't have to keep so much information in my head.
Well, the answer to that is that AI is just gonna become your second brain, but
Oh my gosh, no, yeah, I mean, if you want to talk about AI, we can talk about AI.
I
Um,
I wanted to, and held off on it because that's not what this podcast is about, but, oh, I'm fresh from an immersion where all we talked about was AI. I'm like, "Oh, I have a tech person coming to the studio, and I wanna ask him all the things." But yes, go on.
yeah. Okay, I'll come to your question first. So you said, what is the practical advice that I would leave your audience with?
I well, and then I spoke to journaling and how
Journaling.
so
Journaling.
many yeah, how has it just improved your life? How has it helped you? I'm curious.
So I wasn't kidding when I said I can keep less in my brain. So there's a few habits that journaling actually. So two things, right? Journaling not only helps me just offload things, what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, and then there's a memory record of it somewhere, whether it's paper or whether it's in software. The
Mhm.
other thing journaling does for me is it helps me build habits. One of the
Mm,
things that I always tell people I mentor is, or one of the questions I ask is, have you met yourself? And I don't just mean your likes and dislike. The reason I ask that question is because it's a big question, but it forces people to think about, what does he mean by have you met yourself? I mean, yeah, I know me, but what I've learned is that my likes and dislikes aside, there's a lot about me that you know, if I didn't sit down and write and journal about it, or just even sit down and reflect on it, I wouldn't really understand. So, for example, we talk about identity a lot in pop culture. What is your identity? Who do you associate with? Who's your tribe? As somebody who is, half Filipino, half Pakistani, what is my identity? Is it faith based? Is it country based? Is it where I'm living now based? Is it what I do based? So those are the kinds of things that I ask myself. And journaling in some ways helps me answer those questions by really just honing down on me. And coming back to, being a chief minimizing officer, one of the things I don't want to do is let the negative voice in my head take over. So that's another way for me to say, look at all the things I accomplished. So when I journal, I try and write down something that I did, so that when I go back and go read it again, it's a reminder for me to say, yeah, you did that, you know?
mhm,
So to me, it's not only a way to offload what I might be thinking and feeling, and I can just set it aside. It also lets me go back and give me an opportunity to just assess me for what I've done, because we're always looking to move forward. And that's a great characteristics of the human race, is we're always looking to move forward because time is always moving forward. Without getting into the philosophy about time. But for me, it's also important to look back and say, hey, celebrate the wins too. You did that. Praise yourself a little bit. It's not a bad thing. You should be able to say, yes, I did that. Whether you did it alone or with the help of a team shouldn't matter, but you are part of that journey. So that to me is why I journal, and that to me is why I write things down.
mm. I just was speaking with a friend before driving over here, and to go back to that AI immersion that was a part of, one of the professors ended the discussion with, you know, if you wanna use an AI image generator and actually wanna understand it, it's like, take an arts history class. If
Mm,
you're grappling with the ethics of AI, take a philosophy class. It's like, this is the way you bring the humanities into the discussion, and that's exactly what you did right now. You brought the humanity part to the discussion, and as a humanities girly, as I I wanna stand up and cheer and say, "Yes." Like, in this age where there's so much we can do to streamline and optimize things, sitting down, reflecting, taking that moment to, as you said, meet yourself is so important and will help us, I feel, not lose ourselves as we just become immersed in a world that is AI polished, for lack of better words.
Yeah, you've touched on something that I think is important for your listeners to also, spend some time reflecting on and understanding. AI polish is not always great, depending on the context and the situation. So imagine if we all have PhDs in our pockets and we don't have to think about or remember things, we can just ask it. At some point, you're going to miss out on the journey itself of getting to that nugget of knowledge that you're after. And that's part of the human condition. You have to live that journey and experience it. If all we had were nuggets, we would not appreciate what got into making those nuggets in the first place.
Oh, all right. Now I'm in church. Okay, I'm no longer in a podcast studio. Or I'm in a classroom now. Amir, really quick, what are you reading?
Oh, right now?
Yeah.
So I'm almost done reading this book. It's called The Coming Wave. It's written by Mustafa Suleiman. He's the Microsoft AI CEO. And it really frames for me, and I encourage your readers who are interested in AI to definitely read this book. It frames for me the societal, the technical, the political, the economical challenges that AI poses to all of us as human beings. And it's a very well thought out, well written book. It grounds the listener and the reader into the history of how
Mhm.
things were in the past and then contextualizes it with where things are today and how it could play out in the future. So it's a great read. It's called The Coming Wave.
Right. I will link that in the show notes. I will link your LinkedIn in the show notes. And yeah, no, thank you so much. Oh, and also, well, where people can find black belts in boardrooms as well. So thank you, Amir, so much for sitting down with us, taking time out of your schedule. I know you're like, I have a hard stop. I go, I get it. I know I'm an EA. I respect that time that you are giving to us. So again, thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Like I said, this is quite a privilege for me. And I appreciate you giving me the space to dive into some areas I never had thought about all day or even for some time.
Yeah. Thank you.